The Batman Universe Comic Podcast. Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
Hi, this is Denny O'Neil.
My name is Neil Adams.
And this is Paul Dini.
Hi, my name's Dan DiDio.
This is Kevin Conroy.
Hey, this is Francis Maniple.
Hi, this is Jim Lee, and you're listening to the Batman Universe Comic Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Batman Universe Comic Podcast, episode number 231. I am your host, Dustin, and today I have with me...
This is Ed with a slingshot.
And this is Stella without a slingshot.
And we are bringing you the latest comic news and comic reviews from the weeks of September 3rd through September 16th. We have a total of 2 books to cover and just a little bit of news. So let's get into that news. The very first thing we have is on September 5th, DC announced the details for Batman Day, or as it's known this year, Harley Quinn Day, because Harley Quinn's 25th anniversary happens to be occurring at this point. They're calling it Harley Quinn Day. It's really Batman Day or whatever else they would like to call it. But there's a number of special things going on that will be happening. There will be a number of special issues released at your local comic shop. There's a Batman Day 2017 special edition, which includes the first chapter of Batman Volume 3, I Am Bane, plus an original 3-page Harley Quinn story by Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti, and Brett Belvins. There will be a Harley Quinn Batman Day 2017 Special Edition number 1, which features the first chapter of the Joker Loves Harley graphic novel by Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti, and John Timms. And then Superhero Girls Batman Day 2017 Special Edition, which features a sneak preview of the upcoming graphic novel DC Superhero Girls Out of the Bottle, written by Shea Fontana with art by Marcelo Gichara and Agnes Garbowaska. So those are the things you can check out. There's also a massive digital sale that will be taking place. If you were unaware of what day actual Batman Day, Harley Quinn Day, whatever you prefer to call it this year is, it's actually September 23rd. So if you have a local comic shop, there's a good chance that they're participating in Batman Day 2017. They might have those 3 issues that we just listed off. They might have some other Batman stuff on sale. Who knows? You'll have to check with your local comic shop, but that is actually when it's happening. As you're listening to this episode, the previous week there was all kinds of DC All Access digital series that featuring a bunch of Batman and Harley Quinn related videos. So you can check those out over on the website as you're listening to this. And then, like I said, there's a digital sale that is still going on. It will be going on for a while as you're listening to this. It might be wrapping up, I think, probably Monday, the 25th, because they tend to go throughout the weekend. So check online for more details. We have all the details of everything that's happening over on the site under comic news. So be sure to check that out if you are interested.
If anybody thought that Harley Quinn was taking over Batman comics by appearing all the time, it looks like you might be on the right track.
Yes, she is clearly the Penguin of 2017.
That's a fact.
Yeah. All right, so then September 13th, we're right around the corner from Solicitations releasing. As you're listening to this, Solicitations have already released, but we have a couple of the solicitations prior to the full list releasing to talk about. The first thing is that it was announced that there is going to be another Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover event. This will bring back the creators of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Batman crossover act, James Tynion IV and Freddie Williams II. They will be doing the second series, which is going to, again, be a 6-issue miniseries. This miniseries will feature Bane being transported to New York City and basically getting all of the villains within the TMNT universe together to underneath his control. So he's going to become the big bad in New York City, while Donnie is actually gets transported to Gotham City and seeks out the help of Batman. So you can take a look at that. The first issue is going to release in December, on December 6th, and then there will be a second issue that will actually release on December 20th. So 2 issues in that 1 month, and then they'll release 1 issue per month moving forward. But for whatever reason, there's 2 issues that are going to release in December. So we have cover art for the first issue as well as some interior art by Freddie Williams for you guys to check out over on the site. So are we excited about TMNT?
I didn't read the first one, but a couple of people that I talk about comics with seem to enjoy it. So
yeah, I enjoyed both series that they did, so I'd be interested in seeing another interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for me was I think the second one I probably like just a tad bit more because I have been reading, or not reading, I've been watching the Nickelodeon TV series with my son as new episodes are releasing. And I think I was probably a little bit more attached to that because it did feel just like the cartoon, and then it had the animated series for Batman involved in it too, those versions of the character. But the first one by Tynion and Williams, I think, was a very good story, and it worked very well. I don't read the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comic that IDW releases, but I have heard good things about it. And I feel like based off of the artistic elements of it, it seems like it's very in line with what's going on in the main Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. So I'm guessing that's kind of the direction. They're just trying to kind of intersect the normal comic universes of the two groups of characters into this miniseries, which obviously makes sense. So some more news that came out on September 15th. There is a slew of new creator announcements and other things related to solicitations. I'm going to go through the first one real quickly. There was an announcement there's going to be a crossover that's going to be happening in December. It's going to be called the Super Sons of Tomorrow. This is going to take place in Superman number 37, Super Sons number 11, Teen Titans number 15, and then Superman number 38 in January. These 4 issues will all be written by Peter J. Tomasi and will feature Damian. The actual solicitation mentions something about a Batman of tomorrow traveling to the present to prevent some sort of disaster before it happens, and he somehow believes that Superboy is responsible for the death of millions. Now, no word is whether the Batman of tomorrow is going to be Damian Wayne coming from the future, or if it's a different Batman from tomorrow, but that's a crossover that's going to be in those 4 issues come December, so you can be on the lookout for that.
Anything Tomasi does, I'm in for. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last couple episodes we've defended Tomasi's work, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do here. Another real quick one, there was an announcement. We knew that Brian Hitch was going to be leaving Justice League after the issues that are coming out in November. So the question was, who's going to be taking his place as the writer over on Justice League? And DC announced that Christopher Priest, who is currently writing Deathstroke, he's going to be coming on board as the writer and I assume it's one of the artists, because normally these books have more than one, but Pete Woods, who's known for his work on Action Comics, as well as the Robin series before the New 52, they're both going to jump on with issue number 34, and the basic idea of what they're doing, Priest actually went on to say that the idea of what they want to do is, what would happen if these characters existed in the real world? What would that mean, and how would that affect the stuff that's happening? So you basically have the Justice League interacting with real citizens in today's world, probably a little bit more timely references to things that are happening in the world today. So that's some of the stuff that you can look forward to in December for Justice League. I know that both Jessica and Ian over on the site have given, I don't personally read Deathstroke, but they have both said that Deathstroke is a very good series. It's actually very, very highly rated over on Comic Book Roundup. So I am interested to see what this is going. And honestly, I haven't really liked the direction of the Justice League series since the beginning of Rebirth. It's one of the few books that I haven't really enjoyed. So I'm interested to see a new direction, and I'm hoping that it will be much better than what we've gotten for the last year and a half.
And this guy has become recommended for me from like everybody. Multiple people try to get and read the Black Panther series they wrote. I'm kind of comicked up right now. So I'm actually kind of excited because I was kind of want to check this guy's stuff out, and I read Justice League. So yeah, I'm totally in for this.
All right, and then the last bit of news related to solicitations deals with some creative changes that are happening over in the pages of Nightwing. Tim Seeley has announced that he'll be leaving Nightwing after issue number 34, and he will be jumping over to Green Lanterns. Nightwing will then be picked up by Sam Humphries, who is currently working on Green Lanterns, so they're basically swapping. And then joining Sam Humphries will be Bernard Chang, who has been working on Batman Beyond for the last 2+ years. He's going to be one of the new ongoing artists in the pages of Nightwing too. So Tim Seeley did say that all of the stuff that he's been doing in the pages of Nightwing, the stuff with Raptor and some of the other stuff, it will all have a conclusion. He's not leaving before he wraps up the big story that he's been doing. In the last arc that he's doing has Raptor and has the fallout of the team in Bloodhaven and things like that. So there's no reason to get despaired if you are upset that potentially the story is not going to be getting wrapped up, but because he has assured us that it will. So that is what you can look forward to in Nightwing. Come in issue number 35 is when it's changed, which is mid-December. All right, so then the only other news that we have is there was 2 new articles for last week in the Batcave. They include, the one big thing was on September 4th. That article includes a image released by Dexter Soy, which features what Dexter Soy mentioned as Jason Todd's new villain. It's a new villain, I'm assuming. You can take a look at that in the article over on the site. And then there's a number of DC All Access videos that you can also check out. One of them is focusing on the Bombshells United that recently just launched. There's another one dealing with Who's Mr. Oz, and then there's also one dealing with some Dark Knights Metal stuff. So you can take a look at all of those over on the websites, as well as all of the other comic news that we have on the site. So with that, we're going to jump straight into our comic reviews, and the first one we have is Batman.
Batman number 30, The War of Jokes and Riddles Interlude, The Ballad of Kite Man Part 2. Tom King writer, Clay Mann pencils, Seth Mann inks, Jordi Belair colors. In this issue, we find out that Batman has decided to be on the side of the Riddler. So you see him attack other people, obviously, that were on the side of the Joker, and the ramifications of all of that and what the villains think about Batman finally joining. We also see Kite Man, obviously. He gets smacked around because he's not necessarily doing what the Joker would like to do. And also the Joker is upset that Batman's on the side of the Riddler. And we have a flashback to, well, the whole thing is narrated between Charles Brown and his son, and that Charles's ex-wife calls him a joke, basically. And so he has to explain to his son what that actually means and that he's somewhat proud of it. And then his son and he have a special moment flying the kite, which you can assume connects back to the first time that we saw the two of them, because they were flying a kite then. But Kite Man, unfortunately, gets beat up and ends up in a holding cell of some sort, and Riddler ends up interrogating him. And the weird thing is that Riddler even touts in front of him that he killed his son, of course. So, but Batman's apparently still on the side of the Riddler. So that's this interlude number 2. So first obvious question would be, are you shocked that Batman chose Riddler's side and Batman's actions throughout this issue?
Well, if Batman chose to be on the side with Joker, that would be pretty mind-boggling to me. I don't know if there's a right or a wrong choice, honestly, but it seems like Joker would be far removed from the direction he should go. Riddler, because he's at least intellectual, there might be some way of, at least bringing him to some sort of idea that there's a medium here and that there's not necessarily the best way to keep going about this is the war. I don't know that Riddler would want to have Batman involved with him in the first place either, especially after what we saw in the last issue with the whole dinner scene. As far as the characterization goes, I would say that I'm a little bit lost as to why he actually is choosing the Riddler, but I don't know that he should be choosing either one of the sides, and that's my biggest problem. I don't think that this issue overall was that bad. I think that the perspective of Kite Man makes it interesting, but it does seem, because we're not really delving into Batman's thought process as to why he would, we knew that he was going to choose a side because that was told to us in the last issue. But this time around, it does feel slightly strange that the interlude, although it's focusing on Kite Man, we're seeing from his perspective and seeing these other elements of it. But at the same time, we don't really know the thought process of everything that's going on with Batman.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of Batman choosing a side is just foreign to us in a way. So would he choose the Riddler's side? Well, even the interaction at the end of last issue, the last issue we saw Batman in, was, remember when he walks out of the house and Riddler's like, yeah, I'll let my hostages go. And Joker says, well, I think I may have already killed mine. I don't know. I think that giving these two sides, there's no doubt he would pick the Riddler's side. Again, I'm surprised that he'd pick anybody's side. I guess this is supposed to be a younger Batman, so the kind of more modern, more grown-up Batman we're all used to seeing, wouldn't pick a side. But I guess if he had to pick a side, then it does make sense to me that he would take Riddler's side.
Yeah, I guess, it's the least of two evils that potentially Riddler is that person to choose of the two. I agree with Ed that perhaps just choosing the fact that he was led to make, it was basically an ultimatum, that he was led to make this choice seems very strange. But, beating up on the villains, that's what he does. It's just that he's on a team doing it now. But what really disturbed me was that last page. Can't necessarily see his reaction because he is cloaked in darkness there. But the things that Riddler is saying, even after I killed your boy, you'd still squeal. Because if you remember I guess it was interlude number 1, Batman was saying that he was going to do whatever he could to help his boy or help Kite Man with what happened to his son. We weren't sure if he had died, but I guess now it's clear that he did. So just to have him be there is like condoning that act. It's not, he doesn't verbally do it, but just in the presence there, I think it's terrible. So not liking that too much.
Yeah, let me jump
Yeah.
in real quick.
Sure.
The thing is, I remember when we were talking about that other interlude, how we were so against the characterization of Batman in that issue, because it was basically even though Kite Man is technically a bad guy, doesn't mean that his son, who's an innocent in this situation, should be, just thrown to the wolves, per se, just because his dad is a bad guy. And the way Batman was written in that situation, it came across like that. And in this issue, because there's not really that remorse feeling that I feel like really should have been shown, that's the problem. I think that they're still with the characterization. I think the problem with these interludes is that they're taking away and maybe the idea is because it's from Kite Man's perspective, that's not actually how, Batman would be, but that's just how he's being portrayed. And maybe that's why we're seeing it and saying, disliking the portrayal of Batman so bad in these two interludes is just because of that specific version of the character being seen through the eyes of Kite Man.
Okay. My other question was in regards to the layout plotting of this. I guess I was just confused because the sequences I don't think go in sequential order. Did anyone else get this idea? Because sometimes he's outside doing something and sometimes he's inside in the ring with Joker, and I just couldn't get a sense of actually what was happening.
I wouldn't say that I got that feeling exactly, the way you're saying it, but I mean, there's definitely is some sort of disconnect with some of the stuff that's been going on. But I wonder if it just has to do with, because again, it's from Kite Man's perspective. We're just getting, the stuff that he sees, and it's in some sort of weird sequence because of that. I mean, there are a couple times where we see him getting knocked out, and then he randomly is involved in a different situation. It does feel like some of these are, though, are these all taking place in sequential form, especially when it comes to all those interactions that he has with the villains? Is he actually going a specific direction? So I can definitely see the confusion, but I didn't necessarily notice it until you actually mentioned it.
I didn't notice it till you mentioned it either, and you're probably accurate. I guess this whole issue kind of felt disjointed when you start having characters like Joker and Riddler, and then Kite Man, which I think is the whole ending of this issue, is yeah, you're Kite Man. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I didn't notice it, but now that I can see that it is. So either there was a continuity error here or we're missing something, some trick of the narrative. But yeah, it's definitely true.
Okay. Glad I wasn't alone because I just had trouble orienting myself, quite honestly. I don't know. I just felt like the words necessarily, it was follow one or the other sort of thing. So I just tried to push past it. So my final question is in regards to the narration that is layered on top of this. And this seems to be something that Tom King enjoys doing because last time we saw it was the letter that was overlaying and traversal through Santa Prisca. And I just wondered if you felt like this conversation between Charles and his son, was it more successful, less successful, or about the same success as Catwoman or Batman's letter over the Santa Prisca story?
I think this worked a lot better than the Santa Prisca one. I really did not like the narration at all in the Santa Prisca or the I Am Bane storyline. I know that the intent was to get like an emotional impact. I just didn't feel it. Here, at least, like I have an idea of what's going on. I think that part of the reason with the Catwoman letter that didn't work was we didn't even know who was, if I remember correctly, and I honestly, it's very difficult with all these books that release so often to remember things so precise. But I want to say that we didn't actually know it was Catwoman writing the letter until the very end. I want to say that's the case. Or that there was another one where Martha Wayne wrote a letter, or he was writing a letter to his mom or something like that involving his mom and one of the other ones. And I didn't feel like either one of those really did anything for the story. I mean, like obviously they were trying to show parallels, but I feel like this shows the parallels a little bit better. And the narrations do a little bit more for what the story is. I think, if anything, he's definitely learning from his past work and doing a better job, because I see this as a huge improvement over the stuff that he did with I Am Bane.
I'm actually opposite of Dustin here. I actually found some of the Catwoman ones to be a little bit more insightful. I actually liked that. The first time we did this, the first letter, right? I really liked it. Now it just seems like, to me, like it's like the law of diminishing returns. Does that make any sense? Like the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's kind of clever. And now I'm like, I don't need to see this again. I'm good. So I didn't particularly like this one at all. Sorry. Here comes the outvote.
This one's hard. Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing this, even though it's pretty tragic at the end. But really, you don't. And I guess there is a connection. Like, you really have to sort of sift through and make that connection, because it's all about Kite Man being a joke, and that theme is running throughout, and you see it visually. Riddler's repeating it, and then you have the connection between his son and everything. But it felt like the layer didn't belong, especially with what was happening in the actual action in the pages and everything, because Batman's present. So I'm like either or, I could have kept it or could have. So I feel like it's maybe about the same amount of success.
Okay, so Batman, I'm going to give a total of 3.5 out of 5.
I'm going to get lynched. 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5.
Over on the website, Matthew gave it 4.5, so that's going to give Batman a total of 3 out of 5 batarangs. Let's move into our next book. Detective Comics. Detective Comics number 964, written by James Tynion IV and Christopher Sabella, art by Carmen Carnero, and colors by Ulysses Areola. The issue starts off with, at Arkham Asylum, this is yesterday, at Arkham Asylum, the groundskeeper flinches at the sound of laughter from the inmates, but the perspective pushes in to reveal Clayface and Mudface catching up and reminiscing. While Basil broaches the subject of the cure that Dr. October is working on, Mudface tells him that though she appreciates his visits, he'll always be the monster who viciously hurt her. Today, Clayface sits in Monster Town, desperately trying to hold on to his moral reasoning after 12 hours in clay form, listening to a recording of Cass telling him to be brave, that she believes in him and wants him to make the world a better place. He loses control and attacks Dr. October. Nearby, underneath Monster Town, Anarchy shows Spoiler his secret town of Utopia. While he explains the structure of the town, Steph meets two friends, Leslie Tompkins and Harper Rowe. Harper tries to catch up, but Steph is overwhelmed and Lonnie pulls her away. He tries to sell her hard on the project and also kisses her. She pulls away, uncertain, and Batman bursts on the scene, demanding that Lonnie tell the truth about the project. Meanwhile, Clayface poses a terrifying threat to Dr. October, claiming that Basil Carlo was never there. Cassandra comes to the doctor's rescue, putting Red Robin's bracelet on Clayface with impressive skill. Shattered, Basil stumbles off, thinking that only way to remove Clayface's threat is by removing himself. Underground, Anarchy fights with Batman and reveals that the first victim was his first partner. When Steph expresses horror at the victim's violent tactics, Lonnie claims that such action is necessary to take down Batman and force him to join Anarchy. Steph, however, rejects Lonnie's plan and his attitude towards her. Batman assists her in knocking Anarchy out, but she leaves angrily. Batman follows, towing the bound Lonnie, promising that though Anarchy must face justice in Arkham, he won't shut down the hidden town. Bruce tries to tell Steph that Tim is still alive, but she leaves too quickly. Back in the Belfry, Basil despairs, but Cass approaches. Despite Basil's protests, she sees the similarity in their situations and embraces him to give him hope and comfort. While in Arkham, Anarchy sends a message to the first victim saying he failed to recruit Steph, but he did clone her phone, and the next stage of their plan can begin. All right, so this issue ends the 2-issue story arc. So the first thing we need to talk about is the small shipping moment that happened where Anarchy he does kiss Steph, and Steph pulls away.
Yes.
Yeah, he doesn't try. He actually does. And she pulls away. So the question is, we talked about, the potential of a love triangle in the future once Tim Drake comes back. It's clear, at least by the way that she pulls away before the reveal that he has bad intentions, that she's not necessarily involved. So I can say, at least on my end, that I don't see the love triangle taking place. I see like maybe Lonnie has a crush on her or something, and maybe there's that element of it where maybe there's, once Tim comes back, there's a tug between the two to like win her affection, but I don't think there will be a contest whatsoever between Tim and Lonnie. But I think that in Lonnie's mind, he has a chance. So to get your guys' perspective, is this whole situation with Lonnie just basically a crush, or was he doing this to basically try to reel her in to, recruit her as part of this group and to enact the plan that he's discussing with First Victim?
Well, I mean, I think it's possible that he liked her, but I think by the end of this issue, Steph's reaction killed any kind of that love triangle thing. I mean, I think she's pretty vehemently anti-everybody at the end. Is it possible he liked her? Yeah. Is it also just as possible that he liked her but also realized that he needed to use her in the First Victim plan? Probably more likely. And like I said, I don't think it matters because I think her reaction by the end is pretty telling that she's not going to have anything to do with Anarchy. I mean, in front of in a relationship, in a dating.
Could you clarify your last one? Are you saying that this is all for pretend and he's only using emotion to go along with the plan? Or are you saying that he was using the plan in order to gain her affection?
Both. That was the question. Is he doing one or the other, or something else for that matter?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I would like to say that I'm pretty sure I said that this thing was going to come where he was going to kiss her and she would push him away and say it's too soon. So I do give myself a pat on the back for guessing that correctly. See, now this is hard because he's clearly not a reliable person, as we've seen at the end, where there was some shady dealings going on and he had ulterior motives, or he at least had another plan should she not follow through. So if that had not happened, then I would like to say that his were authentic, especially because he's roped in people that are not idiots. He has Leslie Tompkins down there as well as Harper Row. And these people, they're not dumb. So, there's got to be some truth, I think, to his care for humanity. And so that's why I lean towards saying that his feelings for her were authentic, but they might be colored by, I don't know if I don't think he is completely altruistic. I think there's always something hiding beyond there. So I think the feelings are true, but I think there's also something coloring it. So it's a non-answer, but I just think it's not a pure action on his part.
Yeah, I think to a degree, I think that's probably the best way to answer is that he probably does have feelings for Steph. He probably does have, a desire to help, humanity in general, but his approach and his methods to go about doing it aren't probably the best methods and options that have the most honor in them. Working with First Victim, if you look at First Victim's character and the fact that they were seeking out taking down the Bat family because all of them in some way were affected by members of the Bat family, like there's a reason behind what they're doing. It's not necessarily a good reason, but it's a reason. And when you think about it, you almost kind of feel that they have some sort of justification, even if you don't agree with their methods. They were all affected. They all believe that if you eliminate the Bat family and they're not in the picture, stuff like the Joker and the other villains wouldn't be affecting, the city as much as they would be. Whether, that's always the discussion that everybody says, are the villains there in Gotham because of Batman, or are they there and Batman's there to basically just, to basically root out this evil that has infested Gotham City. And there's different points of view. I've always been on the side of the evil has existed. Yes, the evil is probably a little bit more colorful with, the villains and the rogues gallery that we are accustomed to. But the evil has always been in Gotham. Batman was a force for the evil to be taken down, and the villains, the rogues gallery, yes, maybe a direct effect of Batman being around, but there's still an evil that he's got to take out. That all being said, Anarchy is a character that is very reminiscent of the First Victim and that story arc where they felt like there was reason. Anarchy feels like he has reasonings to do what he's doing. The idea of the utopia and this village or this town that's underground, the idea that Leslie Tompkins and Harper Row are involved, I think that, for the most part, there's plenty of good to do with this entire town. His reasonings for the town might be just that. And then he might be using what he already did with the town to get close to Steph so that he could potentially recruit her or whatever, and potentially, have some sort of relationship with her. And then that's just part of his other plan that is an effect of what he's doing with the town, but isn't his ultimate goal. That being said, the other question I want to talk about is, so this was only 2 issues, and I was pretty sure based off of the solicitations and some of the stuff that we heard at San Diego from Tynan and some of the other interviews that we've heard, that this 2-issue story arc was going to focus heavily on Spoiler and Anarchy, which I will say it did. I'm not debating that it didn't, but one of the things I feel is slightly strange is the amount of Clayface that we got in this specific issue compared to even just the last issue. That we haven't had a whole lot of focus on Clayface. Yes, he's been a member of the team and they have given him his own character moments and things like that, but there hasn't really been a Clayface story arc like there has been for Cassandra, or there has been one for Kate or Spoiler for that matter. So the thing is, Clayface really hasn't had a whole lot of time to really shine per se. So the question that I want to ask is, do you feel like shoehorning him into this Steph Anarchy story kind of does the character a disservice? I mean, we know he's not actually he's a member of this Bat team, but he's not a Bat family member. I definitely would want to see the other members of the Bat team. We talked about this last episode too. Which member would we want to see eliminated from the team? If he was one of the names that we said makes the most sense. But the question is, by shoehorning him into this story arc, do you feel like it detracts from what they were trying to do with Steph and Anarchy, especially since they only had 2 issues to do it in? Or do you feel like it worked out perfectly?
I'm going to say yes and no. I think it's both. What Tynion has done consistently, as there's always a bit of foreshadowing of the next story. And you know what I'm saying? In his current arc, there's always that, hey, look where we're going next type thing going on. I think that's what was going on here. I think that they could have cut it down a little bit. I like the Clayface lead-in. I think it's fine. And because it kind of reminds us, hey, there's these other, when you have this many characters in a book, I think sometimes if you focus too much on them, we forget about the other characters. And then when we come back to them, we're like, oh yeah, that guy, I forgot about that guy, So I like what he was doing. I think he could have done it with less page count, though, to be honest with you. I think 2-3 pages, just giving us some highlights of what was going on would have been enough. I didn't need to see the interaction with the Mudface, from the victim syndicate. I know that we obviously look like we're coming full circle on that. I think that could have been brought down a little bit. I do wish that we had more of the Anarchy story. I mean, I'm a 90s. I started, hardcore reading in the 90s. Robin Anarchy was a major part of the universe back then. So I'd like to see more of him. I think maybe, though, the solution here wasn't get rid of one of the stories, but maybe just give us a 3rd issue of this story would have probably worked out a little better.
I think you do him a disservice by saying it was shoehorned in. It's not like this is the first time that we've seen this particular story point throughout. And to be honest, this is what it needs to be like, storytelling-wise, if we have an ensemble book. You don't just focus on one particular character and leave the others in the dust, and then you have the next issue pick up, in the same time of like, oh, 3 months ago, this was going on. Remember when that stuff was happening to Seth? Well, this was happening. You can't do that. So having everything happen at the same time and being able to give attention to other characters, even though the larger focus is on one character, I think needs to happen for an ensemble book to be successful. So I like that they did this. Again, this is nothing new because we've been following Clayface along. And I think it's also important for cast to continue to to be here as well. And I have a feeling that it will lead to something as well. So because this problem has been introduced, it's up to Tynion to bring it back when all is said and done. So hopefully there's a resolution and we can see from the beginning that, oh yes, this is where it was going.
I will say this, okay, I said shoehorn, but I guess I should have phrased it a little bit differently, which is it's not so much about the fact that they're, hinting at stuff. Ed said, he's been doing this where he's leaving these little things that he'll come back to. He's developing the story. It's a thing that he'll pick up on in the future. That's completely understandable, but it felt like just this specific issue, not necessarily Clayface's story as a whole or anything like that. It just felt like there was a lot of Clayface in this issue. And I'm not saying that you can't have other characters have their character moments, but the one thing that I've noticed, despite the fact that, yes, I want to see all of the characters have moments in the issues, one thing I've noticed is that when there's a story arc that's focusing on a specific character, like the Victim Syndicate was very, very highly focused on Spoiler and Stephanie Brown at the time, that story arc didn't really have a whole lot to do with some of the other characters. When we were focusing on Cassandra Cain and Lady Shiva, she was the main character that we were focusing on. Sure, there were little bits and pieces that popped up in some of the issues that would lead into, future story points that would come back and be plot points for future story arcs and issues and things like that. But it feels like because this story is Anarchy Spoiler and it is only 2 issues, it just felt like this issue had a lot of Clayface in comparison to even just the last issue, which they hinted at the same thing with, him saying, I need the bracelet. I can't, control Clayface. They hinted at it. I thought that's where they were going to leave it. But then this issue, we have him reminiscing with Mudface. We have him actually attack Dr. October. We have the other members of the team try to, take him down or, put the bracelet on him so that he's got control of himself. And it just feels like there was a lot more than there probably should have been. I would probably agree with Ed and say that maybe the best way to do this, if they were going to do it, add one more issue, make the Spoiler Anarchy stuff a little bit longer, and then spread this Clayface stuff out, because even if they are trying just to present something so that they can come back to and say, this is what we were doing, this is what we were trying to do with Clayface, we introduced it way back here, that's all fine, but it seems like very strange to have all of this happen when the whole idea of this story was Anarchy and Steph, and there's things that happen here with Anarchy and Steph, but it doesn't feel like this issue, like I come out of this issue and I don't feel like anything's really been resolved with Anarchy and Steph, other than Anarchy we find out is working with First Victim. Steph is still mad at Batman, but now is also mad at Anarchy, which doesn't put her in any different position than she was in going into the story arc. But we have this huge thing with Clayface, where Clayface goes from being a member of the team to attacking somebody that's part of the team to having to be taken down by the team, all in just one issue. It just seems like there was a lot more Clayface than there should have been. 3 issues probably would have worked it out better, where they could have spread the Clayface stuff out, had a little bit more of a subplot instead of, at least to me, feeling like the majority of the book.
But isn't that maybe the point? Like, don't you think that's probably what he's doing, is just setting us up for the next Steph story? Because 2 issues is a tease. That's a prologue, right? Like,
here's the thing. Like, I'm all about long-term planning. I love when writers have the ability to plan super, super far in advance. But the problem is that some of these little plot points that he doesn't pick up back on them for like 8 months. And like, despite the fact that we're getting like 2 issues per month, that's a long, long time when you think about it. 16 issues is a long time to come back to something. And like, he had the one issue with Steph back in whatever that was. I think it was like the beginning of June. He had that one issue with Steph where she, we saw what she was doing when she's not part of the team and how she's still trying to be a vigilante, but go about the way of doing it differently than Batman, which is fine. That there's no issues with that. But like, to have a 2-issue story arc, introduce a villain like Anarchy, who I consider a decent sized villain, not like, probably A-list, but I definitely put him on B-list villains, or at least A-list of like Robin villains. I would definitely say that he deserved a little bit more page time and a little bit more flushing out of his character, even if it is setting something up in the future. I don't like then just have it one issue and set it up in a one issue thing, not do a 2-issue story arc and then do this thing. Like I'm comparing it to maybe something like not a lot of the books do 2-issue story arcs. There's either, these random one issues like we've been seeing with Kite Man in Batman, or there's a 2-issue story arc like the Catwoman Batman story that Tom King did in Batman. And even though that was only 2 issues, which was unheard of at the time because everybody was doing super long story arcs, it was a very, very well-crafted story. And I just feel like I don't leave this feeling like it's accomplished a whole lot other than just setting up something else in the future. But if I didn't have this element of it, I'd still have setup that is going to be going forward. Like the Clayface thing, yes, he's losing his moral ground and he, is unable to control the Clayface element. Okay. That's one, basically, 2 sentences to describe what's happening with Clayface. Steph thinks that anarchy's a good solution to her problems, finds out that he's not. That's a 1 sentence to synopsize what happened here, but nothing actually has changed with Steph at this point. So, sure, we're hinting at First Victim coming back and other things will happen, but it just doesn't feel like these 2 issues did as much as I guess I thought they were going to.
Yeah, and I guess that was the difference. I never really thought a 2-issue story would be anything more than set up for the next one. Yeah. Anarchy never gets payoff. You remember the Detective Comics story, which was really good, but then we never got the other half of it?
Yeah, that's true.
Anarchy's been a character that's been played with and hasn't paid off for a while, which is unfortunate because done well, he can be really interesting.
All right, so Detective Comics, I'm going to give a total of 3 out of 5.
2.5 out of 5.
3.5 out of 5.
Over on the website, Ian gave it 3 out of 5, so that's going to give Detective Comics a total of 3 out of 5 Batarangs. That is all of our in-depth reviews. Let's jump over to the website for Greater Gotham. First up on November 6th, main TBU books, where we talked about Batman number 30, Nightwing number 28. In the finale of the Spiral story arc, Nightwing and Huntress face off against the evil mastermind behind Spiral's arms dealings, Mr. Minos. This review by Paul. He gave it 3.5 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a thumbs up.
Neutral.
Continuity issues here, just like we were wondering / complaining about the relationship between Zatanna and Batman, as well as Batman and Catwoman being in the same continuity. Suddenly we have Nightwing somewhat flirting with Batgirl in the Batgirl book, and then all of a sudden he sleeps with Helena in this book. So wondering about that. I'll give it a thumbs up.
All right, Harley Quinn number 27. Harley Quinn tangles with the Penguin, who seeks to knock over much of Coney Island to build a casino. This is by David. He gave it 4.5 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a neutral.
Neutral?
Abstain.
Secondary TBU books. Bane Conquest number 5 as Bane encounters Catwoman in his missions in Russia. The circle closes as Dionysus tries to entrap them both. This is by David. He gave it 4 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a neutral.
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 Main DC Universe books, Justice League number 28. As the Justice League settle in with their newfound children from the future, Wonder Woman starts to believe that she is the cause of the horrible future that the children came to stop. This is by Jim. He gave it 3 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
Abstain.
Secondary DC Universe books, Bombshells United number 1, which includes digital chapters 1 and 2. Bombshell versions of Clayface appear in the issue. Green Arrow number 30, Black Canary appears in the issue. Injustice 2 number 9, digital chapters 17 and 18. The Injustice versions of Batman, Bruce Wayne, Batgirl Barbara Gordon, Black Canary, Damian Wayne, Alfred Pennyworth, Batman Jason Todd, and Ra's al Ghul all appear in the issue. Moving over to September 13th, main TBU books, where we talked about Detective Comics. Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, number 14. Helena and Dinah try to get a day away from battling strange baddies as Barbara holds down the fort in Gotham. It doesn't work out like any of them expect. This is by Jerry. He gave it 4 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a thumbs up.
Abstain.
Thumbs up.
Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 14, as the Outlaws adjust to the new benefits of super smart Bizarro leading their team. Bizarro upgrades both their arsenal as well as their headquarters. This is by Bill. He gave it 3 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a neutral.
I'm going to throw thumbs up.
Neutral.
Secondary TBU books, Harley Quinn 25th Anniversary Special number 1. Harley has her 25th birthday, and it's a selection of great stories, including Harley, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy having some fun in Vegas, while another story has Joker throwing Harley a surprise birthday party, and then another story has Poison Ivy and Harley facing off against Swamp Thing. This is by David. He gave it 5 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a thumbs up.
Unfortunately, I haven't got a chance to read it yet, so I have to abstain.
I would give it a thumbs up.
Main DC Universe books, Teen Titans number 12. While the Teen Titans try to help the citizens of Gotham as they recover from the massive mountain that devastated the city, Damian heads into a labyrinth designed by Riddler with help from Green Arrow, Harley Quinn, and Killer Croc. This is by Bill. He gave it 2 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a neutral.
Come on, Green Arrow, check. It's thumbs up. Come on, it's great. I loved it.
Thumbs up.
Titans number 15, Dick Grayson explains to the team that he was not a willing agent of Hive, but rather became a double agent to discover Hive's location. In the ensuing battle, the team faced brainwashed Narc and Mel Duncan, and this could be Wally's last mission. This is by Jim. He gave it 4.5 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a neutral.
Abstain.
Thumbs up.
Justice League of America number 14, the JLA's adventures in the Microverse continue as we get some plot development in addition to Lobo's shenanigans. This is by Matthew. He gave it 3 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a neutral.
Thumbs down.
Abstain.
Suicide Squad number 25, the Suicide Squad rallies together to free a mind-controlled Amanda Waller and stop an army of Suicide Squads from killing the world's superheroes. This is by Paul. He gave it 2 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a thumbs down.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Dark Knight's Metal number 2. Batman plays worldwide hide and seek with the Justice League and then turns into a door. This is by Corbin. He gave it 4.5 out of 5. I'm going to give this one a thumbs up.
Neutral.
Thumbs down.
Secondary DC Universe books, Action Comics number 987. While no TBU characters appear in the issue, the identity of Mr. Oz is revealed, who currently has Tim Drake imprisoned. New Superman number 15, The Batman of China, Robin Bot, Harley Quinn, Killer Croc, and Deadshot all appear in the issue. And then as far as TBU trades and hardcovers that have released, there's a bunch of them. All-Star Batman Volume 1, My Own Worst Enemy trade paperback. All-Star Batman Volume 2, Ends of the Earth hardcover. Batman Year 1 Deluxe Edition hardcover. Harley Quinn by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, Volume 1 Omnibus hardcover. Harley Quinn by Carl Kessel and Terry Dodson, Deluxe Edition Book 1 hardcover. Suicide Squad Volume 3, Burning Down the House trade paperback. Batman, The Court of Owls adult coloring book. Batman, His Greatest Adventures trade paperback. Legends of the Dark Knight, Jim Aparo, Volume 3 hardcover. Batman, The Art of the Dark Knight, The Master Race Deluxe Edition hardcover. Harley Quinn, A Celebration of 25 Years hardcover. Harley Quinn, The Rebirth Deluxe Edition Book 1 hardcover. Harley Quinn Volume 3, Red Neat trade paperback. DC Universe Omnibus Expanded Edition hardcover. So if you didn't think there was enough Harley Quinn stuff out there, go to your comic shop now because there's tons of it.
Yeah, if you can't find a Batman comic to read, you aren't looking.
All right, so before we delve into listener Q&As, 2 things. The first one is there's 2 editorials that were posted up on the site. Both are a character spotlights of Anarchy. The first one deals with the history of Lonnie Macon, and the second one is a history of the other versions of the character, including the Sam Young version from Detective Comics during the New 52. Both of those are available on the website in 2 different parts, but they're both under the comic editorial section, so check those out. In the coming weeks, some of the editorials that you can expect to see, we're going to delve into a character spotlight of Tim Drake and his history due to the fact that he's going to be popping back up in Detective Comics. We also have a in-depth look at the relationship between Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson that will also be broken up into multiple parts due to the extensive history. So those are some of the things you can look forward to in the coming weeks. So before we jump into listener Q&As, the one thing that we didn't do last episode that we said we were going to and then we just didn't was we're going to talk about Dark Knight's Metal. We forgot about it. I mentioned it in the last episode that we were going to talk about it later. I forgot. Stella reminded me at the very end of the episode, and then we just decided we'll push back to this episode because we'll have the second issue as well. Now the second issue is released, so we can talk about both of the issues, Dark Knight's Metal 1 and Dark Knight's Metal 2. And then there was also a comment that we'll get to during listener Q&As that also asked us to talk about Dark Knight's Metal, which we intended to in the first place. We just honestly, it slipped my mind the last episode to talk about number 1, but I did remember after the fact, and then we said that we would just do both issues here. So Dark Knight's Metal, both of the first 2 issues released, written by Scott Snyder with art by Greg Capullo. Honestly, the best way to describe what's going on is I'm going to say it's just bat-ass crazy. And I'm not actually going to say the swear because I'm just that kind of guy.
Semi-sweared. You semi-sweared.
But it's badass crazy, and that's the best way to put it. Here's the thing. Like, I am not super familiar with all of the happenings and the ins and outs of the entire DC universe. I am familiar with the Batman universe and the characters within the Batman universe and a lot of the supporting characters of the Batman universe that appear, like some of the Black Canary stuff and how that stuff bleeds over into Green Arrow most of the time. And I'm familiar with a lot of the Green Arrow stuff because I've read Green Arrow pretty consistently over the past 10 years. But the thing is, there's a lot of stuff happening in Dark Knight's Metal that touches so many different things. And the one thing that I have to say before we get really in depth is, I think we've made comments in the past, and I know I've made my own comments about Scott Snyder not working within continuity and doing his own thing. And this is so far removed from what I normally expect from Scott Snyder because he's clearly referencing so many different things that have previously happened in the history of the DC universe that is so out of character for all of what he's written before within the Batman universe that makes me really think to myself, he's really changing the way he's approaching telling the story. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is whether or not you enjoyed the first two issues or not. Let's just get that out of the way because you've heard our thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral ratings in the past for this issue on this episode and then last episode with the first issue. But, are you enjoying what's happening so far?
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it. It's like you said, it's like a continuity overflowing of your chalice of continuity, I mean, there's references to all kinds of stories and all kinds of characters and different versions of characters. And I mean, yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. Not really sure where it's going, but I think it's a lot of fun.
I skimmed it last episode, and so I was ill-prepared for a discussion. So I actually read it, kind of, the issues 1 and 2, and I don't like it. I'm bored by it, and I also don't really understand what's happening, so I feel like I'm reading Odyssey all over again.
Oh.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh, I'm just bleeding.
I think it's a waste of paper.
Oh, my
wow.
Sorry.
God.
I do. Why do we need to bother with this, frankly? I don't know if I'll be reading 3 through 12.
Oh.
Is that how many issues there are?
No, it's only 6.
17.
So it's like it's everywhere. Hopefully it doesn't go to Batgirl and Birds of Prey and such.
Wow. I definitely would not go as far as to say, like, here's the thing. I think for the most part, I have given a lot of criticism to Scott Snyder, and I will say that this is probably, outside of his detective run, probably one of the most interesting things that I've read that he's done. And I say that
Black Mirror, really? Okay.
No. Yeah, outside of Black Mirror.
Okay.
I enjoyed Black Mirror. I still say that's his best story that he's written as far as Batman stories. But I think that this is probably the next best thing that, out of what he's written. And I think a lot of it has to do with because it's tied to so many things. The one complaint I have about it tying to so many things is that some of this stuff that they're referencing is like from Grant Morrison's run on Detective Comic on Batman way before the New 52. And some of the stuff is referencing
pre-Batman Inc.
Yeah, pre-Batman Inc. And so there's other things that are referencing the different story arcs that Snyder himself has written. And then there's other things that are referencing stuff that Snyder's never even touched or has never even been part of the Batman universe. And the one thing that I really, really wish, especially because so much of the stuff that they're referencing has happened over such an extended amount of time, is I really wish that there was editor notes. Bring back editor notes for Pete's sakes, and please tell us where we could read about what the heck is being referenced.
You could have a guidebook for these issues. Are you kidding me?
I know that, but it's just insane how difficult it is to, like, I'm reading some of this stuff and I'm like, I don't know where, like, I know that they're referencing something because they wouldn't be saying it the way they're saying it unless they're referencing something. But I don't know what they're referencing because I don't read everything that there is to read within the DC universe. And that's the thing that bugs me. Like, when you have books that have so many references to so many stories, the last thing you need to do is confuse your reader. And I'm not saying that I'm super confused because for the most part, I've been following along. I understand most of what's going on. I'm not going to say that I'm not lost in some regards, but there's a lot of stuff going on where I just really wish that at least I could go back and read the old issues to figure out exactly what what they're referencing and things like that. And editor's notes would do amazing wonders to do this. But like you said, Ed, there's so much of it that you probably would need a guidebook or 2-page dedicated to the end to have basically sources for all this stuff that's popping up.
Or at the beginning. Yeah, you'd almost need make sure you've read Final Crisis, War Against Darkseid, most of the Hawkman stuff from the 1980s, also the Black Hawk stuff. I'm not even sure when we published that stuff. There's a lot in here.
And then the other part of it is there's so many characters that are involved in some of the stories. Like when they show the Legion of Doom, and I know it's not called that here, but the headquarters that looks like the Legion of Doom headquarters, and they have basically all of these people, and looking at them, I assume it's all the immortal characters within the DC universe. They have the Wizard, Ra's al Ghul's there, Vandal Savage is there, Morgan Le Fay. They have all these characters, but there's a ton of characters I haven't the foggiest idea of who the heck they are. Staring at the pages, no clue who they are. And the problem is, I would never associate Morgan Le Fay wearing the mask that she's wearing in issue number 2. So I'm looking at her, I'm like, who is this? And then I was reading somebody else's interview that said something about, oh yeah, that's Morgan Le Fay. And I was like, oh, okay, well that makes sense, I guess. I mean, she makes sense to be part of that group, but I don't know who half those other people are in that group. And I don't know why they're all coming together other than, whatever. But
we really could have used those. Do you remember when it used to be when a character first showed up in a book, it would always have the name, but not just the name, but in logo form?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
We could really use here, when you have that round table, not even so much dialogue, but just you know what I'm saying? Ra's al Ghul, head of League of Assassins, Morgan Le Fay, centuries old, blah, 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 blah. Because the only reason you get the immortal card, because a couple of them I don't recognize, is Ra's says, I'm the youngest one here. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's so much there. You're right. The books are incredibly dense. There is just every page is Jesus, they got this in there. They got this in here. You got to be kidding me. This is in here.
And then it's funny because reading through Snyder the day that the books are releasing, he's going on about how there's all these Easter eggs in the book, and people are
Easter eggs on top of Easter eggs.
Yes, and he's retweeting them out, and then he's saying oh yeah, there's a couple references of people holding up the the heavy metal rock horns, the hand symbol of the the horns, and he's yeah, there's at least one in the issue, and then somebody tweets when I was well, there's actually 2 more. And I'm man, oh man, it's insane. But then you to the end of the issue of number 2, you get the release of all of these evil versions of Batman from the dark multiverse. And I'll just say this, the art, I'm not a Greg Capullo, huge fan of his art, but this stuff is incredibly detailed. Obviously he's had some time to put this all together, and I really hope that he's had plenty of time to finish out the rest of the series.
And to
because
sleep.
The last thing I want is to have the last couple issues look like they were rushed, because these books are not going to be good if they were rushed, because there's just so much going on.
You just say, if Cap's off by a month, you say we just got to extend it. You can't bring in an artist or rush
There's
it.
no way.
You just can't do it.
Yeah, there's no way. There, I wouldn't see them bringing in a fill-in artist or anything, but I could see him. We've seen stuff in the past with his Batman work where it doesn't feel like he's had as much time, and it's right before it gets to one of those one-off story arcs that has somebody else on the book with Snyder, so that he can take a month off or whatever to catch up. But I just don't want to see that happen, because the art as
the
of
art's
this point is
amazing.
insane. There's a couple I mentioned the thing about there's so many characters and them slightly getting confused in issue number 2, where there's all of the Batmen driving the snowmobiles through the jungle or whatever they're driving, the all-terrain vehicles, whatever they are, they look like snowmobiles to me. I honestly thought it was one Batman, and I just thought it was this weird thing that went through as I was looking at that page. Actually, I had to show my wife and say, does it look like this is one person traveling? Why are they showing this many? Doesn't it look like there's just multiple of the same one, but every single one of them is drawn the exact same way? And then if you keep reading on, obviously you find out that there is multiple. There's not just one, that there's, the members of the Bat family are dressed up as Batman, portraying him so that the Justice League go after them. But it was slightly confusing just because I didn't know what was going on, why there were so many Batmen Batman there. It didn't make a lot of sense. But, you have to keep reading in order to understand some of the stuff. But some of the stuff, it just feels like I read through it the first time and I felt like I was missing so much information just because of how much was actually happening.
There's a lot going on. And I will say this, I read 2 when it came out, and then I actually, which I obviously adore it, but then I went back and read 1 and 2 back to, you know what I'm saying? Just because it's so dense that you don't remember every little thing, you know? So I think I'm going to be reading the issue before from now on, because you forget so much of the little nuances of the story, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
because there's so much there.
Yeah. And I think what we're most likely going to do is like, we'll talk about each issue, you know, our thoughts of whether we liked it or not, but I don't want to dive too much into this, you know, the everything that's going on in each individual issue other than just the brief synopsis that we give during Greater Gotham, mostly because I feel like this is one of those stories where you have to read it all together.
And I think we have Dark Knight's Metal. It kind of does Metal go off in a Batman or Detective or not? It doesn't, does it?
No, it doesn't. The only area that it's crossing over into is with the Gotham Resistance crossover, which is part of Metal. Teen Titans, Nightwing, Green Arrow, and Suicide Squad are the 4 books that it's going to pop up in. And then there's another crossover in November, but those are mostly Justice League characters like Green Lantern and Flash, and then the actual Justice League series. So it's not actually going to touch any of the main Batman books. But that all being said, I can full-heartedly say this, that we will definitely do a special episode either here on the Comic Cast or as part of the special feeds. Once all of the issues release, we're going to do a recap of all of them. We'll probably have a couple guests on to talk about it too. Some people from the site to discuss the series as well, because I think ultimately this is one of those stories where like we could sit here and go in and out of each individual issue like we do with Batman or Detective. But there's so much going on that I don't think that, like, one, I can't touch every single thing that's going on because I haven't read all of these stories that they're referencing. So I'm not the person to, you know, try to bring up these things that are, you know, being focused on. So I'm not the right person to potentially lead a discussion on some of the stuff that's happened outside of the Batman universe. But I will say that we will do some sort of special, maybe depending on how it goes, maybe we'll do like a halfway point where after issue 3, we'll do a special with like the Gotham Resistance, and then we'll do another special at the end with the Justice League. And
when will the one-shots come out? Is that later this month or next month?
The one-shots start as you're listening to this episode. The first one comes out, that's Red Death, is the first one, and then they come out for basically the next 7 or 8 weeks.
So each one-shot once a week? Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, there's still the Hawkman one-shot in November, and then the Batman one-shot in November, and then Hawkman is in December. Either way, there's 2 more. There's a Batman Lost, Hawkman Found one-shots that come out as part of this too. That's as far as what we know. I mean, there could be something else down the, you know, like further out in January or February, because this isn't wrapping up until February. So it's entirely possible that there is something else, but I don't know that there actually will be anything else because there's been checklists that have been showing the dates of when these comics have been coming out for a while. And so
I won't forgive Snyder for basically screwing the pooch on Lady Blackhawk.
I will only say 2 words and then we can continue. Baby, dark side.
Sure. What about Zinda?
Yes,
here's the
thing. I don't know that we can explain his idea behind getting rid of Lady Blackhawk and Blake, or the idea of using Kendra or Saunders, which is formerly known as Hawkgirl, and putting her in the role of Lady Blackhawk. I don't know if we can explain that at this point. I know that I know you're not alone, Stella. And
it's weird. There was
lots of people who complained about the fact that by doing that, but then it also negates, because I remember the interview that was done with the Bensons where they said, oh, with the Blackhawks back, that could potentially bring back Lady Blackhawk. And now there is a Lady Blackhawk, just not that one.
What do you think the odds are, though, that knowing what a continuity junkie and how far deep he's doing this, that there's almost a 100% chance that Zinda comes back at some point in Dark Knight's Metal, right? Like, seriously?
Well, come on. I mean, like, you say continuity junkie, but this is 2 issues. Story, this is 2 issues, and think about how many years he was rewriting continuity for villains and characters in general. So I mean, like,
well, doesn't
give him props for these 2 issues because I've enjoyed them and how much he is actually focusing on so much of the past, but at the same time, let's not forget that for like 5 straight years, all he did was rewrite stuff.
No, I'm not saying that's not true, but it does seem like in these 2 issues, It's like he is trying to make up for everything he's ever rewrote and by introducing every piece of continuity for 30 years. So
That's true. All right, so we'll end our discussion on Dark Knight's Metal now, but basically there is plenty of other issues that will come out and things that we'll talk about. Some of the issues, we're going to be reviewing all of the issues of Gotham Resistance, even like Green Arrow, which we don't normally review over on the website. We're going to be reviewing that come, the end of October, early November, when the other crossover takes place within Dark Knight's Metal, which involves Flash and Green Lantern. We obviously already covered Justice League, but we'll cover those other issues as well. We are going to be reviewing all of the one-shots having to do with the various villains over on the website, as well as the Hawkman Found and Batman Lost. So all this stuff will be reviewed in depth on the website. So if you're not picking up everything or you're not paying attention to everything that's going on, you can definitely check out everything over on the website and you'll be able to follow along with everything that's going on with the story, because all that stuff will have detailed synopses and be reviewed over on the site. So you can check out that stuff. So if we don't talk about it in depth here, most of it is because a lot of this stuff, I mean, we could spend hours talking about some of this stuff because there's going to be so much, especially in the coming weeks. There's going to be so much with the extra one-shots and the other crossovers and all that stuff. So if we don't talk about it here, just remember you can head over to the site and do it and check all that stuff out. But in the meantime, we will do at least one episode relating to the entire event of Dark Knight's Metal in the future, maybe split it up, like I said, into two, just depending on how everything pans out.
I'm in.
That's it. So with that, we're going to dive straight into our listener Q&As.
Boy, did you get a wrong number. Leave your message at the sound of the shriek. No.
We have just a couple of comments. The first one comes from Ian.
I hope that if anything does happen between Anarchy and Steph, it doesn't lead to a triangle, since that type of plotline tends to make all characters involved unsympathetic. I found Tom King's use of the formal dinner in Batman to be the first time the storyline has been satisfying to me. I really like seeing conscious craft at work. There's always a danger of becoming too artificial, but so far King tends to be best for me when his structure is the most carefully constructed. The framing of the actions in the issue, being around the courses of the meal, led to a sense of completion without wasting space, unlike the constant flash-forwards Bruce has been giving in the previous ones. When I was mentioning that Tomasi doesn't like Cass, I wasn't thinking about what happened with the New 52. I was reaching farther back to when he was editor of Robin when Cass went evil for no good reason in Adam Beecham's run. Fair. Additionally, when Cass was finally brought back to proper characterization and co-starring in Batman and The Outsiders by Chuck Dixon and then Frank Thierry, just after she'd been adopted by Bruce, Tomasi took over writing the book and immediately dropped her completely with no explanation, right after she had assumed leadership of the group. I think he is adaptable, but he's clearly shown he either dislikes or doesn't understand Cass at very pivotal points in her history, and I would thus be very skeptical of him taking over Detective. You pose an excellent question about who should write Detective Comics instead, to which I answer Christopher Priest. He's doing incredibly complicated and mature storytelling with both Deathstroke and his Marvel Inhumans miniseries right now, and has said that Batman is a character he would write in a heartbeat if offered. He's even hinted he'd like to tell some actual detective mystery stories in Detective Comics on his blog. Now, I think it's extremely unlikely that any really solid writer would keep the same direction once Tynion left the book. What writer has ever just continued the status quo in the direction of their predecessor, unless they're just doing a fill-in arc? Hopefully Tynion will get his chance to do all 66 issues from 934 to 1000, and if he does, is able to spin off a Tim, Steph, and Cass title or titles, so that the new direction doesn't leave them without a home again. But I think no matter what happens, we're not going to see this team in the same status quo after Tynion leaves. Stella and Dustin bring up the important question of women writing Batman. Joelle Jones will be the third, not second, artist to draw Batman in the main title. After Becky Cloonan drew most of Batman #2, Bill Evely drew one of the stories in the Rebirth Batman Annual #1. 3 female writers I would be interested purely on their previous work for either Batman or Detective Comics would be Devin Grayson, who is writing comics again over at Marvel after a long absence, Becky Cloonan as writer after working on Gotham Academy and The Punisher, and Genevieve Valentine after her run on Catwoman, a noir-inflected look at Gotham that I think would be great for Detective Comics. However, I am not supportive of hiring a writer because of something they cannot control, like their sex, race, etc. I think hiring Grayson, Cloonan, Valentine, or Priest would be a great choice because they're very strong writers, period. James Tynion and Tom King are doing excellent work on Batman and Detective, and the fact that they are both white men shouldn't detract from that. Likewise, my opposition to Tomasi has nothing to do with his race or sex. To give a final example, which Sella may agree with me about or not, both Hope Larson and Gail Simone have not produced as satisfying a run on Batgirl, at least so far for Larson, compared to the Fletcher, Stewart, and Dixon Beatty teams. Lastly, on the question of digital versus physical medium, I think it all depends on how well it's done. I think each has elements that make it more clear how it was created, but it's like trying to say whether oil or watercolor paints are better than each other.
It's pretty obvious it's watercolors. It doesn't really matter.
All right. So there's a lot of comments here. Just going through some of these.
Get them right.
Okay, so I don't want to keep going on about Tomasi because I mean this is the third episode we've been talking about.
Last episode's comments about Tomasi.
Tomasi, I can understand your frustration with him, his usage of the character in the first place. I want to say that there was some interview that was done with Adam Beechin at some point that he was asked why Cass went evil in his run. And I do remember him saying that it wasn't his idea, but I don't know that it was Tomasi, who obviously is, like you said, was the editor on the book at the time. I don't know that it was his idea either. But this was also around the same time that Dan DiDio was suggesting that Nightwing get murdered and a lot of other crazy, stupid things were happening in some of the books that were multiplied in tenfold once the New 52 happened, with the justification that no character should be married and things like that, and that marriage can't happen in any of the titles. All that being said, I'm not going to say that Christopher Priest isn't a good writer. I have not read any of his work. I have heard high marks about his Deathstroke run that I've heard, that I heard you specifically say, Ian, in the past, as well as Jessica has said this exact same thing. I've seen his ratings over on Comic Book Roundup. I know that he's doing a good job. If people enjoy Deathstroke as a character and they are reading the book, he's clearly doing a good job because people are enjoying the book. I would say that the one thing that I guess I would disagree with is the idea of Detective Comics not staying the status quo. I don't understand the idea. Like if you're referring to the idea that if somebody new comes along, the status quo of it can't be a team book anymore, it won't be a team book because a new creator is going to come on board and do their own thing. Sure, creators come on and they do their own thing, but when you look at the entire run of Detective Comics within the New 52, it was Batman stories. Batman, yes, works with different characters, has different villains that he goes up against and things, but there were Batman stories. I mean, that is the status quo, and there was multiple writers who were on the title over the 5-year time frame that the New 52 occurred. I guess the thing that I would want to understand a little bit more is, are you just saying the difference between a team, it not being a team book going forward, and that's why it wouldn't make any sense to have somebody who is family oriented, or are you saying something else about the status quo? Because honestly, when you look at the stories that happened in the New 52, at least in Detective Comics, and Snyder did, pretty much the same thing, but he was the same creator on the book the entire time. In Detective Comics, there were singular stories about Batman. They're very rarely ever involved the other members of the Bat family the entire time, regardless of who was working on the book. Sure, there was a couple stories like the Gothatopia crossover that occurred that had other characters popping up. But for the most part, it was Batman by himself, working by himself. And some of them were more detective oriented and some of them weren't. But if we're strictly sticking to status quo related to it being a team book and having all of these members of the Bat family, I wouldn't say that, that somebody couldn't come along and do something and just change the members of the team either. I mean, that's entirely a possibility too. There's characters that Tynion has been going through and shifting, the members of the team around and things like
almost
that.
Constantly, to be honest.
Yeah. Every story arc, there's some sort of change amongst the team members. So it's not to say that they couldn't stick with it. But I mean, I understand your idea of, if a creator is coming on. I mean, one of the biggest changes I remember on Detective Comics was we had Detective Comics written by Paul Dini before in the New 52, and then Greg Rucka came along and was doing Batwoman. That was a humongous status quo change, but that's because Batman, Bruce Wayne was stuck in time and they had to tell stories about somebody besides Batman since he wasn't even around. So they were telling stories about Batwoman, giving her the ability to have the focus in Detective Comics. Detective Comics, because it's not called Batman, yes, everyone assumes that Batman's in Detective Comics. It could be a book that features anybody. Honestly, I mean, like, it could turn into a Tim Drake book if they wanted to. If Tim Drake, really dives into more of the detective stuff, which he is best known for, there's no reason it couldn't be a Tim Drake book.
Or, to be honest with you, they could just keep it, and I kind of like it now as the de facto Bat family book. There is a lot of characters in the Batman universe, and you don't want to have them with no place to go. And let's face it, they could keep it like that. I don't care who's writing it. Like, if you take over Green Arrow, you're expected to write a Green Arrow story. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you take over Detective and it's become the de facto Batman family book, there is nothing wrong with DC going, it's a Bat family book. You got to use characters. You don't take over Aquaman to write a Wonder Woman story. Yeah.
I don't think Ian was saying that the team aspect is going to go away. I think he was just saying that after Tynion leaves, I think, or even before, there's going to be a shakeup in status quo in order to do a transition to whomever has it next. There's probably going to be some sort of conversation between the two of them to see where the new writer wants to start off and take lead, and then Tynion will most likely write into that, which is what happened with Batgirl, where Brendan Fletcher wrote 51 and 52 as a lead-in to Hope Larson's run. And the other thing, Dustin, you're ignoring the fact that historically Detective Comics was multiple stories. Just focus on New 52 and how it was presented, I think, is a little short-sighted because it could potentially...
Hold on. Yes, notoriously it has multiple stories.
Yeah.
But when did that stop? It stopped in like the 80s, and they haven't really done it since then.
Pre-Nightfall. Right?
Yeah, it was basically before all of the major events in the late 80s, 90s, all the majority of the storylines and stuff. I'm not saying that they haven't had multiple stories, and they could go that route too.
That'd be
but
cool with
that's
that.
not something that they've done in that book for over 30 years.
Well, they've had some backup stories here and there.
And Batwoman did star in Detective Comics for a while, remember?
Yeah, I brought that up. I'm aware that other characters could appear. I just said Tim Drake could have the focus in the book if they decide to focus more on his detective elements of his character. There's definitely different ways they could go. All I'm saying about the status quo is I like more clarification as to what he's referring to as the status quo. When you look at if it's just a matter of the characters moving on from a different world, for example, using the Batgirl reference that you just said, she was in Burnside with the run with Babs Tarr, Cameron Stewart, and Brendan Fletcher, and then she moved into some crazy story arc that she was traveling around Asia for the first 6 issues of Batgirl with Hope Larson's run. If that's definitely a status quo change, but I don't really, the transition was just basically Brendan Fletcher in 51 and 52, in my opinion, was wrapping up some of the stuff that they were doing so that it wasn't left as open-ended. So when Hope Larson came around, she could tell her story and not necessarily be accused of forgetting about all this stuff, even though that's exactly what she was doing.
But they all try to do that, I think, unless it's an unplanned exit. Everyone tries to wrap up their story, and then some are just more successful at it than others.
Yeah, I think some have more time to do it than others, and some are kind of told
you have till tomorrow at noon.
Yeah.
Clean out your drawer. Yes.
All right. So the next comment we have comes from Christian.
Hey guys, thanks for all your work and the dedication for this podcast. I always look forward to the next episode. I really think you guys should be covering the Dark Knight's Metal event, Batman Lost written by Snyder and Batman Who Laughs written by Tynion on this comic cast. This story is too big and crazy not to. I know this is a DCU event, but it's Batman-centric and will have huge ramifications for TBU in the future. Myself, and I'm sure other fans would love to hear your opinions, especially Ed's, speculations and analysis on the event and how it will affect TBU. Please cover Dark Knight's Metal 1 and 2 next episode. Thanks again. Christian, Dark Knight's Metal is a bunch of bantha fodder and
Bantha fodder?
Yeah, bantha fodder. Sorry. Bantha fodder. I could have said poodoo, but I thought that was too strong. But Dark Knight's Metal is poodoo.
Well, Christian, we hope you enjoyed our discussion earlier. In the future, when we have our special, Stella will clearly not be part of that special because she doesn't.
No,
she has to be part of it.
That's
the only way it's going to be fun.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed our discussion of the first 2 issues. And like I said, we will.
Your wish is our command.
We will put together a special in the future so we can dive into a lot more of those, like Batman Lost and Batman Who Laughs, down the line. But yes, we thank you for your kind comments about the podcast. Christian has actually been one of our loyal listeners for many, many years, and we appreciate all of our listeners and all of their comments. All right, the last comment comes again from Ian.
With the announcement that Priest is doing Justice League, I think there's a real chance DC will hand off their hot seats for tech for Batman to him once King and Tynion are done. In like a decade. Winky emoji.
In a decade for Tynion, hopefully not 4. I just don't think King will be. King doesn't do books for that long.
I don't think. Well, King has said that he wants to do 100 issues of Batman. He has said that in interviews. Actually, an interview very recently, he actually said he wants to do 100 issues. But when you actually break that down, because he's doing 2 issues a month, he'd only actually be doing the equivalent to what Snyder did, because he'd only be actually on it for 50 months, which is just about the same number that Scott Snyder was on Batman for his run on Batman in the New 52. So it's about this exact same. So that's what he's looking for. He's looking for like a 5-year time frame of being on the book.
I don't think
that's what it is. Well, it's a little less than 5 years, but anyway, you get the idea. I will say this.
A lot of Batman.
I will say that I clearly am going to have to pick up some Christopher Priest stuff and read through some of his DC stuff to really understand, Ian's necessity for him to be on Detective or Batman. But I will say this. Honestly, if the writer is going from a book like Deathstroke, which I would say probably is more of like a 3rd-tier book, to Justice League, which I would say is a 1st-tier book for the company.
Absolutely.
I'm very doubtful that he would be moved over to Detective or Batman after his run on Justice League, if for no other reason than they don't tend to use high-profile writers on multiple main series. So when you look at Jeff Johns, he did Justice League. He didn't do Batman. He didn't do other books. I mean, he's worked.
Yeah, once he was on Lantern, they put him on Justice League. He didn't go back to Green Lantern.
Right, and he was also, he did Flash for a while. He's done Teen Titans in the past. He's done different properties. But when you look at the hierarchy of titles, once you get to the top, you don't go back down. I mean, and I'm not saying that Detective and Batman are steps down by any means.
Well, Detective is. I mean, looking at pure sales numbers.
Sales numbers, sure. Yeah, sales numbers.
I think Batman
I think Justice League and Detective are right there at the same level right now.
I think Batman, I could see if Priest goes to Justice League and it's super successful, and this is a lot of and thens, maybes, right?
Yes.
And I'm probably going to grab his Deathstroke stuff just to check it out because I'm curious about the guy from what everyone's saying. If he went to Justice League and it blew up, I could see him going to Batman, but not to Detective. Yeah. And that sounds weird, but it's true.
The thing is, like, it'd have to be very successful, and I'd say like critically acclaimed as well as sales, because critically acclaimed only goes so far. I mean, honestly, like Tom King's Omega Men did crazy critically wise, but when it came to sales, it just wasn't there. So it's got to do both for them to really give somebody a book like Batman. I mean, Tom King, they took a risk on, honestly. I mean, he came from Grayson before that, and sure, he had other projects that he had worked on too, but like a step from Grayson to, like the main top book for the company with it being Batman is a huge step. So, I mean, like, he clearly had a pitch that they loved. But I'm guessing that if Christopher Priest was very successful at Justice League, it did well in both sales and critically, then he could sit there and say, hey, I'm really interested in Batman. And then that possibility could happen. But as far as Detective, I don't see that happening, because I feel like it would just be a unilateral, move. And even if he wanted to do it, I mean, like, I don't really see the advantage of, DC as a company saying, we're going to take you off of this book and put you over on this book. But it's not really that big of a move, other than just the characters you're going to focus on.
The only way that actually happens, in my opinion, this may sound terrible, but is if it's critically acclaimed, but the sales numbers go down. Then I could see him going, well, let's put him on Detective, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, that's true.
I mean, it sounds bad, but I think the only way all the Christopher Priest fans out there, you see him on Detective, is if Justice League doesn't sell well. So
Yeah.
probably don't want to see that happen.
All right, so that is all of our listener
Every
Q&As. Real quick, before we move on, I say this every episode, but it's not going to change anytime in the near future. You can support us on Patreon. We would appreciate it if you could support us on Patreon. We are currently sitting at around $75-ish of support on Patreon. Though more support on Patreon means that we can get more actual content that we can produce for the website. The more we have, the more ability we have to produce things like video podcasts, more commentaries, more things that require time and money to actually have someone edit some of these things that we haven't been able to do yet. So if you have the ability to donate some funds via Patreon or even a one-time donation via PayPal, please help TBU out by doing that, so that we can produce even more content for you guys in the future. Real quick, over the month of August, we had a number of supporters that we would like to thank, including Lisa, Jerry, No Deuces, Ian, Robert, and the other Ian. We would like to thank you, as well as all of our other supporters at the lower levels, for supporting us on Patreon. Those of you who are out there who might not have the funds to basically support us, I mean, something as little as $5 a month, which is only about basically almost the price of a comic book nowadays, will help out even a very minimal way. It'll help out TBU in a very real way. So if there's anything that you get out of our comic cast, and you enjoy what we do and the synopses that we read about some of the other books as part of Greater Gotham, or that you enjoy just reading the reviews on the website, save $5 on the comic book maybe and donate that $5 to TBU instead of spending it on a comic book. I mean, I don't want you to not buy comic books, but I do want you to support TBU. So that being said, if you are unable to support us via monetary donations or supporting us on Patreon, then we would love to have you on board working with us at TBU. We have a number of positions that we are always looking for people: audio editors, video editors, graphic designers, web developers. We also are looking for news writers. We're always looking for people to write original content, character spotlights, things like that. We're trying to put a lot more of that stuff together on the website going forward. So if you have any desire to do any of that stuff, please get in touch with me at tbu@thebatmanuniverse.net. Outside of that, please head over to the website. We're doing a much better job of trying to post all of the news that's related to movies, TV, merchandise, video games, and of course the comics as quickly as it happens. There's also tons of other stuff that we're trying to churn out. There's always new episodes of all the other podcasts we offer, like Bruce Wayne's World, Bat Fans, Backle to Oracle, Robin Everyone Loves the Drake. There's even a couple new commentaries coming out in the near future. So, and then right around the corner, Gotham's returning, so Gotham Chronicles is going to be back. So if you have any desire to check out any of the other content, please head over to the website, thebatmanuniverse.net, and check out that other stuff. Outside of that, that is basically everything we have for this episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode, and we'll cover the last issue of All-Star Batman, and the next issues of Batman and Detective Comics, and then obviously all the other stuff that happens within the Batman universe. So with that, that is everything for this episode. This is Dustin.
This is Ed. And this is Stella.
You've been listening to the Batman Universe Comic Podcast. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.